Hi everyone, Kendall here, and welcome to the fourth week of our Butterfly Garden Sew-Along, hosted by me. I have so enjoyed looking at all of your progress that you've been posting into the Kendall's Quilting Corner over at Facebook, and thank you so much everyone for embracing the angled butterflies and going a little bit against the norm. For anyone that hasn't done the angled butterflies, that's fine. I was happy to provide the alternate cutting, and I've seen a few of those come through and they actually look great also. Anyone that's been worried so far that they got the wrong angle or whatever, you know, got their leaves in the wrong spot like I did, don't worry about it. Don't stress. At the end of the day, no one except you will know that something's not quite right. This week we are going to make two more lots of flowers, being the big stop sign flowers and the smaller snowball flowers. Now, I need to apologize in advance. There are 40 more sew and flips that are 1.5 inch squares. So I do apologize for that, but you'll see once it's done that the finished effect is well worth it. As Pat was saying on her video the other day, if you want to, when working with such small pieces, just use a little bit of starch before you cut. It is important to do that before you cut because otherwise the starch may shrink the fabric if it's already cut. So keep that in mind also. But as I was working with batiks, I just went with it. And after doing many projects now with such small pieces, my fingers are just used to it. So I think if I can do it, you can do it. Once we've got this done, we'll then be re-releasing the finishing instructions. When I was becoming unwell, I jumped the gun a bit. I had that video ready to go, and I thought that I'd spelled everything else out in those finishing directions, but I've realized that I have not, so my humblest apologies for that. There will be a new section construction document coming out in the week after this one, so whatever date that is, I think the 22nd of June, so next Saturday, not this morning. So I apologize up front for that little oversight. But with all of that being said, you're not here to listen to me talk, especially when I'm still not breathing the best. So grab a beverage, grab your pattern, download in the description below or at the Facebook group. Come with me and I'll show you how I do it. So as usual, we start with all of our pieces cut out as per the pattern, and you can see here that we do have some 1.5 inch squares again, and that cannot be avoided. And by the end of the video, you will have done 40 1.5 inch squares. So I'm sorry about that, but it's the only way to put these flowers together. We're going to start with E, which is the center of our stop sign flower. And we are going to use our little B squares. And we need to put a sew and flip on all 4 corners of our E squares using the same print fabric. So throughout this video, I will be making both of the flowers. I know I normally only do one, but you know, I'm allowed to change things because, yeah, I'm just allowed. So we'll begin by placing that first sew and flip in the corner there, and as usual, I am using my folded corner clipper. We can line up all the markings as you see me doing here, making sure that we've got the diagonal of that block, and then we slice that corner off. You have seen in past videos that I just use the diagonal line sometimes on the folded corner clipper, and either method is fine. So I'm going to get all 8 of these ready, and then we can move on to adding the sew and flips to our D-strips. For our D rectangles, we should have 2 of each print. We need to add a piece A to each side of these and create a trapezoidal shape, so in the different directions. And I am going to do similar to when I made the leaf blocks for those bunches. I'm going to layer all 4 of my pieces up together and first of all begin by placing them horizontally on the table in front of us, and that gives us a sew and flip that goes up and to the right, as I always like to do, but it gives us the right angle for this side. Now we'll very carefully line up that 2.5 inch mark from the corner there that you can see on the bottom right before slicing through all 4 layers of those. We'll then turn this vertically, and that ensures that we get the opposite angle. So we once again, now we don't have that bottom edge to measure across, but we can make sure that it is still 2.5 inches wide. Make sure that that left side completely lines up, and our little dog ear corner on the top there is straight along the top. We then have the shape that we need to progress to the next stage. So now we'll take all of our A squares and just cut those on their diagonal once using that folded corner clipper tool to make sure that we will finish up with a half square triangle that will measure the 2.5 inches. So you did see me doing this in that leaf video as well. Just stack 4 at a time. Don't do any more because the fabric will shift underneath regardless of how sharp your blade is. I always try to stick to 4 layers. We just make sure that everything is lining up on that 2.5 inch mark, or you can just put that 1/4 inch diagonal line from corner to corner and slice across as you see me doing here. So we'll get all of these ready, and then we'll go to the sewing machine footage and you'll see how I chain piece those 2 center parts through, and then I'll put 4 of the sew and flips on our larger rectangles there, and then take them to the pressing mat. When we come to placing our pre-cut corners onto our D rectangle, just use those cut-off dog-eared or engineered corners that we created when we cut our A squares into our little half square triangles. Line all those up and sew with your 1/4 inch across that seam, and Bob will be your uncle. All 4 sew and flips are now done on both of our E centers, and we have one side on our large D rectangles. In all instances, we're pressing out towards those sew and flip corners. And once we've done this, we can attach the sew and flip to the other side of our D rectangle and once again press that out towards the sew and flip. We now have all the parts made that we need to do each of our stop sign flowers, so we'll just lay it out as per the pattern, making sure that we get the correct center, and we'll pull in those remaining C pieces and they go on the sides as I'm showing you here. So I'll just stack these up on top of each other and sew both at the same time. So we need to start by adding those C rectangles on either side of our center, and then we can attach the top and the bottom row. We'll press out towards those C rectangles once we've attached those to our center row, and then I do believe that I press up towards the D rectangle, but we'll have a look when we get there, eh? All right, let's go. As you saw there, I did indeed press up away from that center strip and away from the center of the flower on both of these, and our 2 stop sign flowers are done. As the name of this flower suggests, we are making snowball blocks, which uses all of our C blocks. So we have 4 of 2 different prints, which is the main color of the flower being the C blocks. The B blocks that you see here are all 1.5 inches, and I hope when I write the pattern, because I haven't done that yet, that I make it clearer on which goes where. So we have 4 of our red in this instance for my light blue and 8 of the dark blue. So we're going to put all 4 on the bottom right hand corner there. Then we're going to split the 8 dark blue into 2 piles of 4 and put those on opposing corners, which I haven't done in the video, but you will do in real life. And then the corner that's opposite the red on that light blue one gets the background square. I haven't done it properly on either of these at this point, so let's see if I correct that, and I do. So we just have to make sure that our contrast color from our C square has 4 on each of the opposing corners. The center of our flower, so I've got red and yellow in this instance, goes on the bottom right hand corner, and our background A squares go on the top right hand corner. We have 4 C squares in each of our prints, so we need to have 4 of our 1.5 inch squares for all 4 corners, and this gives you a total of 32 of these 1.5 inch sew and flips. So we'll start by attaching the center onto our first one here, and again we're just going to do this with our folded corner clipper by drawing our line however you do your sew and flips. Then we make sure that opposite this corner we place a background piece, and on the remaining 2 corners we have our contrasting flower snowball. So you'll end up with 8 fully snowballed sections, and then we need to stitch all of those together. Now I hope that all of that made sense, but if it doesn't, hopefully when I write the pattern, because I still haven't done that, I can make it a little bit clearer. So we're basically creating a snowball from our C square. We have the center of the flower, we have background fabric, and we have a contrasting fabric flower. So in this instance, the center of my flower is yellow. I put the background square opposite the center of the flower, and on the other 2 corners we're using the contrasting color for this flower, which in my case is that darkish reddish color, that, or pinkish really, I guess, that you see at the top of the screen there. So we'll start by doing the center and the background on opposing corners, and then we can do the remaining colors once we've done this. We can get all 4 ready at once, but I just find doing them in pairs like this is the best way, and I will take all of these to the machine and chain piece them through. And it won't be the last time you hear me describe which pieces are going where. So let's finish getting these 4 ready, and we'll take it to our sewing machine and stitch our 1/4 inch. Alrighty, so we have two of our corners snowballed, and as you can see, if I roll this around here so that I can clip it apart, you can sort of see the flowers starting to come together. So what we need to do to make sure that our intersections will nest nicely is sew the these in opposite directions. So two of them will press out towards that sew and flip, and the other two will press in towards that center C square. Once we've done this, the background square can just be pressed out towards the corner, but it's probably a good idea to stick to the same. So two go out and two go in, just so that you keep that rhythm going for when you make the next lot. So two corners out, two corners in. Once we've done this, we'll grab the remaining 8 of those B squares that is in our contrast color and put 4 on, like 1 on each corner that is remaining here, and that'll use up our total of 8, and we'll press those in the same directions as the rest of the block, and then we'll be ready to put these together. With those final 2 corners now sewn on, we just clip these apart and press them all the same as we did. And so you can see here that that yellow corner was pressed in towards the C square. So I'm pressing both of these also in towards that larger square in the middle. The other 2 will, of course, then just get pressed out, and we've got 2 sets of 2 with opposing seam allowance pressing. And that way, when we lay it out in our 4 patch, which is coming up, making sure that all of our yellow points go towards the middle of the flower, that we have opposing seams at every intersection when we actually come to sew this. So put them opposite each other, as you can see me doing here, and when you pick these up to sew the 4 patch by first doing the vertical seams and then the horizontal, all of these seam intersections will nest and sit nicely to go through the machine. With our 2 vertical seams done, to ensure that we can nest that middle seam as well, we need to press these in opposite directions. So you'll see once I grab my cutting mat, I sit them opposite each other like this, and then I'll press that top one over and to the right and the bottom one over and to the left, and then once again that center seam will nest, so that when we go to do this horizontal seam, every intersection from our snowballs to that center seam will nest nicely for us to go and stitch our final 1/4 inch seam. We then just need to repeat this process with our other snowball flower, and I'll touch on the steps just at the beginning and then skip forward to the end. It looks like, from reviewing this footage as I'm recording the voiceover, that I actually spin this intersection in the middle here. So to do that, we just need to pick out the few stitches that are on the wrong side of that seam allowance. As you can see me just pulling those out in the middle here. And then we press the seam allowances in the direction that we want them to go. In this instance, I'm going counterclockwise. Okay, that is the process of putting together our snowball flowers. The big important thing to remember is your color placement, as I said. whatever color you've picked for the center, you do on one corner. Opposite that center, you do your background squares, and then on the remaining two sides, you have the contrast color for your flower.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
And there we have it. Our second snowball flower is done, all in the same way. And again, it is just important to pay attention to the placement of your colors so that the snowball effect gives you also the flower effect. Alrighty folks, that's it for another week, and I do hope that you stick with this and do this last lot of tiny sew and flips, because you have to admit that the flowers look fantastic, and I personally can't wait to see everybody's fabric choices and colors, because I've really loved seeing what's coming through the group so far. I haven't been doing a quilt parade as part of the videos. I'd love to, but I figure everybody's seen it in the group, and I try to keep these videos to a minimum length so that people actually watch the whole video, because not a lot of people do. So with all that aside, thanks for being here. If you've liked what you've seen today, like the video, share it with a friend, subscribe if you haven't already done so, tickle that little bell icon to be notified of all my upcoming releases, and I'll see you all again real soon. Bye for now.